Today, we're looking at Noodler's Purple Martin. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Noodler's Purple Martin is, in fact, a purple ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is this purple has a little bit that stays right where the line was pushed down. It pushes up very light, gets much darker as it comes up, but then we get this bright blue across the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the only difference that I see between these two chromatography samples is the line of ink across the bottom is much darker and much more there on the one that I let dry. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. Now, I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation. It gets completely blurry and gross, and you're going to lose almost everything that you wrote. Now, water reactivated, lifted all of the darkest tones, but left quite a bit of that purple behind. Pen Flush, on the other hand, is putting a lot of the white of the paper coming through. Now, this was a messy set of chemical tests that went on, some resistance tests. Really messy. You see they just really were going all over the place. But looking at the Pen Flush, the amount of the white that's starting to come through, really Pen Flush is all that you're going to need. 1/3 bleach solution. It went crazy. It pushed over towards the water when I went to dab it up. But you can see exactly where that 1/3 bleach solution was. It is really starting to remove it entirely from the paper. But I don't think you need a 1/3 bleach solution to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Purple Martin has a viscosity of 2.22, making it normal. The wetter side of normal, but normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Purple Martin has an average dry time of 16 seconds, making it normal. Just normal. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X 450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X 750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives no feather spread, halo sheen. No shade here because it goes down a bit darker. The extra fine has a slightly lighter tone. Ever so slightly lighter tone. The extra fine has no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some shading. Now, it's a dark purple that has a very dark purple in it, but it never crosses that line of becoming towards a black. Like, the is a very, very dark word. Quick starts very, very dark and becomes just dark and then very, very dark again. Brown is very, very dark all the way through, but Fox starts very, very dark and works its way lighter, which I don't normally see. Lazy does the same thing, starts very, very dark and works its way lighter. 10 seconds to dry. Now, medium gives us a nicest tone, and actually I think as you get to broader nibs, this ink's color really comes through nicely. The medium has no feather spread, halo sheen. The shading is even better than we saw in the extra fine. Like in Quick, it's lighter at the top, darker at the bottom on the Q.
And then it's a nice dark all the way across. Brown is a nice mid-tone all the way through, except the R is much darker and the N is much darker. Fox starts light and becomes dark, and it is fantastic shading. 14 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium. If we look at the extra fine, it doesn't show nearly as much color variation. And we had some, but not as much. The medium shows a lot more, and we get a lot more. The smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. I'm on an entirely different microphone now, and I'm trying some different spots to see how it picks me up. Tomoe River. Tomoe River has no bleeding, and of course it has ghosting. It's Tomoe River. The 1.1, very dark tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the exact same very dark tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. 18 seconds to dry. Now the medium is a slightly lighter tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 24 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. In the smear test, you could not recover this if you smeared while you were writing. So Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. Very dark 1.1 with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and only a couple spots of shading. I don't even really know that you would want to call it shading. Like the word the looks a little darker than the words around it. The K in quick looks a little darker than the rest of the word. 13 seconds to dry. Now medium lightens up in tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It has more spots of shading. Like the H in the is a bit darker than the rest of the word. K in quick is a bit darker. The R in over is a bit darker. So we do get some very nice spots. The R in brown is a bit darker than the rest of brown. So we get some nice spots throughout. Little highlights of shading, if you will. 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us almost no color variation, and we really weren't getting it up there. The medium shows us some decent color variation, and we do get some decent color variation because the tone lightens up some. The smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. So what happens to the tone of this ink when we give it a different background, like a yellow tone paper? Yellow Rhodia, no bleeding and no ghosting. And that's expected because it's still Rhodia. But what happens to the tone of this? Not a whole lot, but the medium becomes a different type of purple. The 1.1 is unaffected and the extra fine is unaffected, but the medium in tone as a purple is changed some. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the 1.1, just a one-tone type thing lighter. So it's not too bad. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shading whatsoever. 13 seconds to dry. Now the medium lightens up significantly from the extra fine. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, spots of shading. Not as much as we saw with the white paper, but the HE, so the T in the is a little darker. The K in quick is a little darker. The V and the R in over are a little bit darker. We do get those spots of shading in there in 16 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows us almost no color variation, and we really didn't get it. And the scrubby of the medium shows us some color variation, and we are getting it. The smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. White lines paper. We get plenty of bleeding. It does not come through and ruin the back of the page where you are then touching the page underneath, but I don't know that you could use it. It's weird. I'm getting more bleeding on the extra fine than I am on the medium, for what that's worth. And plenty of ghosting because of that. But again, that's a nib issue. It's here on the extra fine and not on the medium. It's really weird there. So I don't know, use a medium. Color looks better from the medium anyway. The 1.1 gives no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading whatsoever. Extra fine, same tone as the 1.1 with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 7 seconds to dry. The medium has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, And spots of shading, very few spots of shading. The E in the K in quick, the S in jumps, and that's like it. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us no color variation. We didn't get it. And the scrubby of the medium shows a lot more in color variation than we actually did see. But we did see some spots of color variation. Now, the smear test, you could definitely recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And Strathmore writing paper. Now, other than the scrubby, where I'm putting it on stupid thick and probably scratching the page some, we get no bleeding, we get no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is slightly lighter. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is slightly lighter than that. It also has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 7 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any color variation. And the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing a letter to someone. And that is all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Purple Martin, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I chose Diamine's Light Green because I do like how purple and green go together. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Noodler's Purple Martin? I think this is a very nice shade of purple that does give some decent hints at its shading. It's not my go-to purple, but I think this is a very nice purple that I would not turn down a bottle of, and I would certainly use it up. Thanks for watching.